Hello and welcome to Young Blossom 25 Future Leaders Revealed. I'm Inga and I'm here with Vios, my co-host. And today with us is Iraïs Browaeys, who is joining us for a conversation about future of leadership to share her perspective on multi-generational workplaces and being exposed to both current leaders and executives as well as Gen Z. There is a lot to talk about, Iraïs. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Glad I could join.
Thank you. Iraïs, let me, we don't do introduction, but you get the chance to say whatever is not going to be covered by ChatGPT. So we asked ChatGPT to tell us a little bit more about Iraïs, and I'm going to read it out. It's very, very short summary. And then you're going to be the judge of its accuracy, and you can build on it as you wish. So,
Perfect.
hey ChatGPT, tell me more about Iraïs Browaeys. Iraïs is an international human performance and leadership coach known for helping executives and teams operate like corporate athletes. Iraïs partners with global organizations like Nike, Amazon, Salesforce, EY, PepsiCo, even Google. She's delivering keynotes and coaching that focuses on energy management, team efficiency, and winning culture. Her approach fuses elite sports methodology with clinical training, and she's certified in integrative physiotherapy and burnout coaching and brings a practitioner's mindset to sustainable high performance. She previously coached with Mentality Fit Institute and is now having her own practice, A-Game Coaching. Most recent collaborations include designing Loop Earplugs 6-month growth athletes program, which develops resilience across mental, physical, agility, emotion.
Wow,
How did
I'm
ChatGPT do?
Wow, and all of these kind of specific details on programs that I ran. Yeah, really, really accurate. I think the IQ part of it, the CV is spot on. That is indeed my past. I think what might be missing a little bit is the emotions, the passion, why I do what I do. And that is because, I've always been interested in high performance, whether it's in the sports world or in the musical world or in the business world. That always intrigued me. And so I think the only mistake that ChatGPT made was physiotherapy, that my study was, and it's psychotherapy.
Psychotherapy.
Next to my first master's languages and linguistics at university. But since that always was my passion, and sports as well, I was a triathlete, and still nowadays sports is in my heart, is in my body. That I tried to combine in the corporate world. And I felt that in the corporate world, where I came from, where I started my career, is that, we all know ways how to reach our KPIs, but we don't know really yet how to do that in a sustainable manner. And I think linking and looking to high performance athletes, high performance teams that I've met in my career, that level of sustainability, not on an environmental level, but just on an energy level, on a leadership level, that was missing. And so I've been trying to bring that to the corporate world as much as I can and as broad as I can for the last 8 years, I guess. But you'll ChatGPT will be able to answer you that.
Let me correct it. I did not read it correctly. It did say psychotherapy. I just made it physiotherapy.
That's good.
It's because maybe I'm injured at the moment and I'm very focused on physiotherapy. So that was a
slip
bit
of
of
the
me.
mind.
And Iraïs, can we ask you, you don't have to disclose your age, since we're talking social demographics here and generations, which generation can we place you in?
I'm a millennial.
You're a
I'm
millennial.
in the middle of the millennials, and I'm also proud to be a millennial. There used to be a time where we were shamed by the entire corporate other generations. Now it's a different generation, but I'm glad that I can be the bridge between the Gen Xers that struggle with the Gen Zs and the other way around. So I'm perfectly fine where I am.
Well, very nice. Yeah, maybe before we jump in, let's just remind our listeners of those who missed out on the first episode, where Vios and I talked a lot about Young Blossom 25 purpose. So we're creating a space for future leaders to help us taking the right steps to help workplaces, learning institutions to adapt to the younger generation. Today, we see a bit of a limited structured support to help young professionals grow meaningfully, authentically. As you alluded to, the generation, like, it comes and goes in waves. But I guess these days the gap is particularly wide given the evolution and the technology and how workplaces are evolving. Companies, agencies, university lack a bit of urgency in adapting and evolving and going with the generations. We're going to talk about that. Organizations are still quite dominant by Gen Xers, so I identify as Gen X, and millennials as well, making it quite difficult for younger talent to thrive with outdated norms potentially. And I think we're also missing a bit of contextualization for future leader generation. There's a lot of stigma for the Gen Z, and especially for their values, and they're being a bit labeled as bad values. But simply because they don't align with what current executives really value, right? Is anything to add? You want to take over?
Yes, and first of all, a very warm welcome from my side as well, Iraïs. We're excited to have you here as our first guest. I would like to deep dive immediately into what's important for our podcast, and I would like to ask you if you can share your perspective on generational gaps in the workplace and what role current leaders play versus Gen Z.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good question to start with. And I think that there is a big gap to bridge nowadays. And that I can tell because I hear Gen X managers, and it used to be the time where baby boomers as well, they're still there, complain a lot. And whenever I hear complaints, you know that there's a big gap to bridge. They complain because Gen Z, they don't know how to motivate them. The Gen Z, they sometimes seem like they're in apathy and they don't care, while as I know that there's a different story there. There's a lot of complaints coming from Gen X managers as well. They're so demanding, but at the same time, you cannot support on them, you cannot build on them because they don't have strong shoulders and they're weak and they burn out a lot. So there's a lot of stigma there. That to me needs a little bit of reframing, let me put it that way. And then from the Gen Z side, they also say, my manager, I don't see them walking the talk. They don't inspire me. Of course, I want to leave. There's a toxic workplace culture. And I'm not trying to exaggerate here, but these are the two voices that I hear every time that I work with companies out there worldwide, basically.
You mentioned a lot of very interesting things. What makes this generation so particular in your view? What is it that makes it so special? Maybe
it's a generation that I think is one of the most interesting generations out there. Maybe Gen Alpha will be a little, the coming generation will be even more interesting. But if you look at the way that they were raised, they are the first generation, definitely compared to me as a millennial as well, that grew up with 5 screens glued to their fingertips, basically, that grew up with video as their prime language, basically. We need to understand them because they communicate with images, with videos. The world is connected to their fingertips. They're much more aware of all of the issues out there, all of the problems in the world, but also the level of connectivity, the level of authenticity is crucial. I mean, when my younger nephew, he calls me, he FaceTimes. And in the beginning, I know now we're gotten used to that, but even me as a millennial, I was getting nervous, like, is the lighting good? Is my hair all right? But for them, it's that level of authenticity that they're used to because of that technology. And so I think that authenticity is one key point when you got to look at them, that they just require that also from their leaders. But also many people ask, why do they leave so fast, or why they're so observed or so obsessed with purpose or with the environment. And I guess that all trickles down to that screen way that they were brought up, because they're so much aware of what is going on in the world. The options are endless for them on what do I become in the world? Do I become a YouTuber? Do I go for the corporate world? Do I run a business myself? And we're deep diving into many different topics already, or touching upon many different topics, but also from the burnout perspective, there's a huge amount of pressure on these young kids because they can become everything they want to, because everything is available to them. All resources are available to them. And if you cannot succeed in becoming something, it's not anymore because you didn't have the right resources, or because you didn't have the right background, or because you weren't able to go to Harvard, because now everything is available to them. And I just don't think that even I, let alone stand the Gen Xers, can imagine how big that pressure must be for them.
Absolutely. And I think you raised so many great topics here. We can make a full episode just discussing one by one out of these. I'm particularly interested to understand a little bit more your perspective on what do you think motivates those people more? What is it closer to their hearts?
Which gets us immediately in the sphere of what is not motivating them, and why are they leaving? Because that's one thing that I hear so many times. We got a huge retention issue. Talent is leaving. We don't know how to keep them. So what truly is motivating them? And I think that to me, Gen Z isn't the issue because of all of their demands. It's outdated leadership that is, and outdated ways of motivating one person. I mean, we come out of a time where when you were promoted, that was like the biggest prize and the biggest way of getting motivated that there was. And so we worked really hard. And I know you as Gen X, you worked even harder to get to that. And that was the level of recognition that you got. I think nowadays, Gen Z, they love many different other things that to us might not matter so much, but it's a personal thing. I mean, we're deep diving into generations, but basically motivation is a really personal thing. Some of them might love the community. I know that for Gen Z, that is extremely important. They love flexibility and they love working from anywhere, but they deeply crave that level of community. For some, it is being part of a team that works together really well. And for some, and I know that from research, that is crucially important, it's growth. I mean, Gallup does studies, Deloitte does studies that always shows that it's not pay that is their biggest motivation. It shows that learning and development is their number one priority. So I think when leaders deliver on that, and there are many techniques on how to zoom in there, people stay longer and they stay more. But toxic culture, poor leadership, that is why young generations nowadays quit their job or they don't feel motivated.
Can I jump in here and get your perspective on something, and maybe a bit of a different view from our dear admired Simon Sinek?
Nice.
So there was an episode that he recorded with Esther Perel, who is a psychotherapist as well.
I love her. She's from Belgium, by the way.
There you go. So they had an episode. The title's a bit misleading, but if you want to listen in, what love life can teach you about work relationships. So it was all around relationships, and they touched base in Gen Z, how you build growth, career, and how relationships play a role in that, and how we are capable and able to build relationships. But what was more interesting, they double clicked on Gen Z and touched base on why they are changing jobs so frequently. And one of the things was they're changing because they haven't learned conflicts. So I grew up on the playground. I grew up playing with friends, not on 5 screens at my fingertip for sure. So did millennial to quite a large extent. So we kind of fought at the playground. We learned how to fight, how to resolve conflicts, all of that ourselves. Our parents were not intervening. And as a result, you learned how to deal with conflicts and how to confront and resolve.
Yeah.
Today, that generation, especially Gen Z, the moment it starts to become uncomfortable, instead of confronting, they're leaving. And how we interpret it is, they got more money. They left, they got more money at the job, or they're just lazy and they're leaving without even having a job lined up. Give me your reaction to that. Why they potentially are leaving? Are they not able to handle conflicts?
I think Esther Perel makes a very valid point. She always does, by the way. But we got to look inwards and not blame it on them, because why haven't they learned it? First, to me, there are many different reasons. One of them is they grew up with parents that didn't want their children to go through the same challenging childhood as they went through. And with parents that most of the time wanting to overprotect them because, hey, I want you to have a great life and I want you to have the best feelings in the world. And I don't want to let you, go through adversity and through setbacks. So they did that, which to me is a little bit of the issue of a Gen Z that is, I'm generalizing once again, but that often is not resilient enough. But resilience is something that you learn through hardship, through adversity, through setbacks. So they will get there eventually. That is to me one thing, the overprotection of us as parents for them. Second of all, when they then arrive to the working floor and you have leaders that, if we're being honest, they want to hold up that image of being strong, powerful leaders that are not vulnerable, that can take anything, any challenge that there is. And then we expect our youngest generation to be vulnerable, to be able to talk about tough things. As what I often see is that leaders, they don't invest yet enough time and energy in creating that psychological safety, in opening that dialogue, in letting them work around, how can I give now constructive feedback? I don't see any leader asking for feedback in a constructive way. I don't see any leader asking, I learned in this 360 that I got to work on my listening skills a bit better. Can you, dearest Gen Z, let me know if in the next meeting I'm not doing that so great, or because I want to learn as well, because I'm vulnerable here, I'm sharing it. Can you let me know? I don't see that happening. So the vice versa, communication that is not there, I think it is part up to them to learn it. But I also think that you got to put them in the right environment for them to thrive and to talk about whatever it is they want in life.
Do you have, from the work you're doing, examples where companies are doing the right steps at all towards that direction to kind of bridge that gap?
Yeah, both big scale companies as scale ups in general. ChatGPT mentioned that I was working with Loop earplugs. It's a young earplug brand that started off in Belgium. Two very ambitious founders. One of the first 10 employees that they hired when they were still tiny, now they're gotten to New York. They have companies in Asia. It's crazy the growth that they went through in only 8 years' time. But one of the first employees that they hired was their chief happiness officer, because they knew how important that was going to be to retain talent, to work with talent. When you go there, and I've been many times to their offices, it's a thriving company where people come as they are. It's a huge community out there. You don't see any like classical corporate, stuff happening. It's all one big, you come as you are, you bring whatever you want to bring. And the bar is high, because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to scale that high. But I think a couple of the key recipes that they really invested in early on when they were building the company is putting culture first and then upskilling their leaders. And they did that through indeed a growth athlete program where they were really invested on not only coaching all of the employees on mental health, the importance of that, on productivity and focus, because indeed focus with younger generations, also because of those screens glued to their fingertips, it can be a challenge. They coach them on how to, pop things up when you don't feel well, how to deal with the unknown pressure that a scale up of that scale requires. And they didn't only coach their employees, but what they also are really, hard investing in is leaders of that young an age, because many of them are Gen Z leaders, millennials. They're definitely not Gen Xers, how they can become a leader. And to them, one thing that we've worked on, and I work on with different company as well, is there used to be a time where you're only an expert as a leader, an expert in sales, marketing, finance, social media, whatever it is. But I think nowadays that role is broadening and broadening to you're also sometimes, I will look at you as my leader. And as a leader, one of the most crucial skills is inspire me. Inspire me not with KPIs, not with hard things, not with strat plans that for young generations, and even for me, they're not inspiring at all. But, be a convincing leader. Be a leader that grabs people along on that vision, on that why, that longer term. So a leader. Then also you have to be a manager, and that requires day-to-day management, right? When the house is on fire, when everything goes to pieces, I don't want you to inspire me with your beautiful words, right? I want you to tell me what to do at this instant. And also there, you need to grow leaders in a certain manner. But next to expert, next to being the inspiring leader, next to being the synchronizing manager, there is one role that we often forget, and definitely in the more classical corporate world, which is the role of a coach. And a coach is, that requires an entire different skill set. A coach enables people. A coach grabs people along. A coach asks the right questions. And if you compare that to the traditional leadership, classes, or, those are a lot of times about managing and leading. There's one skill that you need to manage and lead, which is I tell you, I show you the way, I tell you the vision, or I tell you what to do, or here's my expertise. And as a coach, it's more about asking. And that is one skill that I think, and not only Loop works very hard on that, but also at Danone, for example, which is a bigger scale company. In Europe, we've transformed that entire leadership from less tell, less executing, less managing to more ask. And if you do that, if you ask more questions, you stimulate not only the creativity, but also the engagement of people because they feel involved by asking more questions. By not only asking questions on how to solve problems, what their input is, but also asking questions on how do we feel about this? How's the pressure? How's your energy? How's your well-being? All these kind of topics. And to me, that is what leadership nowadays is all about. It's about coaching with key performance indicators, KPIs, which we all know too well, a little bit too well. And then also coaching with KDIs, which is key development indicators. And that is, to me, modern leadership. And all of the companies that are really not having that much issues with retention, they lead with KPIs and with KDIs. And to me, that is the difference between a company that can, grow share, that can be successful, externally perceived, and a company that is gonna win in the future without, only being fantastic. I call it often the watermelon effect. It looks green on the outside, but when you dig a little bit deeper with many companies, and you see that often, I see that within one session, it's red on the inside, right? And the marketing is great, and the values on their website are great, and all of the things are great. But when you go to TikTok and you watch one employee movie that you look up, you see that, the culture is not that well. To me, that is the difference between a pure performance culture. Sometimes you see that with a lot of tech companies nowadays have a huge issue in retention. And the difference between winning companies that are sustainable, that are winning over time, and that are addicted to progress over results only.
Well, you definitely got me excited with a watermelon. Never thought watermelon in such a way. And I also have to say, you got me excited a lot with a chief happiness officer. Would love to recruit one time for a role like this. You mentioned something very, very interesting to me, Irais. How do you change the mindset of a manager nowadays to go from KPIs to KDIs, or combine them both in a way that is constructive and makes sense to a better?
You mentioned the right word, Viles. It's all about the mindset. But many of them, they describe, we want to build a great culture here, and they describe behaviors. But as a mental coach, it starts in the mind, and that is where you got to crack the code. When you ask me for my humble opinion, I always come in and I measure a lot. Inga, you know that from working with me in the past, I measure, because leaders, when you tell them something, they're not going to believe it. And nowadays, when you have science to back it up, when you have numbers to back it up, it's the strongest mirror that you can hold. And next to telling, you're asking them. So you show up, you measure live with them, with their people. Hey, how is your energy? How is your motivation? How strong is the feedback here? How often do we hold back from feedback because we fear repercussions, which, indicates a little bit to the level of psychological safety. Which kind of mindsets do we have here? Are we thinking in silo mindset? Am I more like the passenger, passive kind of culture, or, winning, or do we have a performance culture? And I measure all of these things to get the awareness up. And to me, that is the biggest driver for leaders, that, to then ask them, so what do you think? How are we doing in terms of your leadership? And what are the skills that you think we need to work on here? So a mindset shift always comes for me from learning through big level moments of awareness, and then just holding a mirror for them and see, do you want to look into the mirror or not? Because if you want to be an inspiring leader, we got to change, because what got us here will not get us there anymore. That's obvious.
I think this is absolutely great, and it always goes two ways. Yeah. What advice would you give to Gen Z at this point, in order for them to be able to pivot, to take more from the current leadership? Because it always takes two ways. Yeah. Obviously, Gen Zers are coming, current leadership is leaving, but at the end of the day, we're still here together now.
Yeah. Very good question. Because my instant reaction is, I want to say, be a little bit more outspoken about what you want. But I hear the Gen Xers already say, but they are super outspoken already. I mean, they're saying out loud what nobody else dares to say out loud. So I get that as well. But to me, the fact that they are speaking up so much is not a bad thing. I wouldn't resist that. Instead, I would embrace that. To me, that is just operational gold. They are the first generation that dares to say out loud what is wrong with the organization, what is wrong with the leadership. And therefore, you shouldn't take everything as bare truth. But if I would advise them, one thing is discover more who you are on the inside. And with that, I mean, so many of them are manipulated is a strong word, I know, but are influenced by the mass out there, mass on TikTok, mass on Instagram. And so it molds your mind into a certain kind of mindset of what you think is important. But my question when I work with them individually, because they burn out so fast, or because, any other things that companies want me to work with them, it always surprises me that they don't know yet what their core values are. And if you talk about them burning out, or if you talk about how do I want to be led as a young generation, and what are the skills that I want to learn, or what's the path that I want to follow here, it's most of the time because they aren't sure yet enough what their true DNA is. And it's not surprising me, because how do people get to discover their core values? Because they go through adversity, and because they go through a rough time. But those are a couple of the exercises that I always do with them. Is what has shaped your life so far? What are the depths that you went through, the valleys, the tough times, and what are the peaks in your life? And how did they shape you into the person that you are today? And what is it that you truly want? Instead of, being addicted to social media constantly and to your community, we got to do the work inwards first and find out, what do we want? Is it pay that motivates us? Is it a community that motivates me? Is it, I want to work autonomously? Is it, I'm driven by ambition and by performance? Could be the case, but we don't know what we want to stand for. And so what we expect from our managers, if we haven't done the deep digging work yet. And I think that makes you more resilient overall, but I also think that makes you a lot more sustainable in your career. You'll be able from a young age, and I wish I had those lessons when I was younger, but from a younger age, knowing what you want and how you want to carve your career path. Because I don't think everybody is made to become a manager.
Absolutely.
And that freedom and flexibility is something that we should all have, I think.
I think that there were so many things. I was keeping notes, and there are so many avenues we could go towards. But I think when I started sharing with you first that we're thinking about kicking off the podcast to talk with Gen Z and the older generation, and how we bridge the gap. The one thing you mentioned was burnout, and I was like, how are they burnout? Because the association I have in my generation of burnout is the workload that we were loading on ourselves.
Yep.
So it was a lot more work driven. But what you're saying for the younger generation, it's because they have so little excuses for failure, because everything is available, that puts a different type of pressure. I think that is quite revealing. I think next time I'm interacting with somebody from that generation is just be mindful of that the pressure is different, but the pressure is still there and has the same outcome that it had on my generation as it is having on that generation.
Yeah.
The one thing you mentioned, Irais, about how outspoken they are, and I think this is where what you say was outspoken. I would say, oh, they complain a lot potentially. But again, in the Simon Sinek conversation with Esther, Simon asked Esther, what is the one skill you would recommend to Gen Z to learn? And guess what she said? She said, talk to
Communicate.
strangers.
Yeah.
Talk to strangers. Why? Because their ability to communicate is also hampered by how they grew up and how they were raised with those 5 devices at their fingertip. But talking to strangers and being able to articulate what is it that you stand for, what are your values, what's important to you. And I'm having interviews now for podcasts, because also not every Gen Z is jumping up and down saying, yeah, Inga, I'm going to come to your podcast. But they're very, very open to talk. And what was consistent is, it is important for me that I grow. It is important for me that I continue learning. I'm not so much about titles. I need to have a sense of progress, and I need to have a sense of development, and I need to have a sense of learning, which I found very interesting, because the preconception out there is they're very impatient, they come in and they want the next promotion, but it's maybe the lack of articulating it in the right way. They don't mind the promotion, but what they mind is if they don't progress. What's your take on this?
I think it's always a give and take thing, because we can complain about them communicating not enough, and being vague or being too demanding. But I think that there's also, once again, a responsibility for leaders to invite them to these conversations. I mean, if my partner in life doesn't speak up romantically about what they need in a relationship, I need to ask it. And it's the same. It's the same dynamic on the working floor. So everything, there's this proverb that says in Chinese, and I really love it: the man who blames another has a long way to go. The man who blames himself is almost there, and the man who blames no one has already arrived. And I love it, because you always got to look for ways of how you want to meet the other person. And I love the advice of Esther Perel saying, talk to strangers. What I would encourage even more is have real conversations with the people that are already in your life. And I mean that with friends, next to texting them only, call them, have a real face-to-face conversation with them, and don't shrink away from positive friction, is what I like to use as a word. I love that, positive friction. And that's also a lesson for leaders, but also a lesson for Gen Z, because we all got to learn to do that as human beings, is do not fear a good conversation where you disagree from an objective standpoint, because you feel that when you communicate constructively, even if it's about tough things, even if it's, hey, I didn't like what you said in that meeting, or that touched me really personally, or I have the feeling that you're not happy with my performance, or there's a little bit of a thing between us and I want to clear the air. There's also a huge level of connection that can come from these moments. I always think that, when you have a fight with your partner at home and then you resolve it by a good conversation, you instantly feel connected and you feel glued together. And I've had experiences with leaders that I've seen talking to their Gen Z employees, and if you can teach them that, they'll give so much in return, and they'll feel like there's a space to say, hey, I know that you're going big on this title, and I know that you're projecting myself, and 1 year from now you can make it to promotion. But if I'm being very honest with you, and now that trust is there between you and me, because we had that friction moment of positivity, I gotta admit to you that is actually not what I want to learn here in this environment. I'm not here to make it to promotion. Of course, I want to get a better pay every year, but what I want to learn here is, how to become a great leader, or how to function better within a team, or how to get to know myself, or I want to learn these and these and these hard skills, and that I'm not getting at the moment. Or that will open up the conversation. If you have real conversations with your leaders, that will also open the conversation to say, hey, I know I can trust you a little bit better now. And I know that they'll think, even you're a Gen X, far outside my working world, although I don't identify me as the same as you, I don't feel that well lately on the working floor. And it's getting a little bit too much for me. What can we do to meet each other? Or what can you do? Or what can you offer me? And what can I do in order to feel better here? So it's about asking questions. We often go straight into judgment. We often go straight into,
Solution.
solutions. And the exploration phase is what we're missing. And that we can do because it takes time, and we're not used to that because we have to deliver quarter after quarter after quarter. But it takes time. And so spend time with your leader, with your people as a leader, to get to know them and to go into that exploration, asking stage, I would say.
Yeah. It's incredible. If I tell you guys, we are 39 minutes in, and I want to follow up on so many things, but we probably will have to schedule another one, Irais, with you, because there's so many things to cover. Obviously, with your interaction with both groups, you have both perspectives. So I think the one thing that companies may benefit from as they think about how do we address, because everybody's thinking about it, like nobody is ignoring it anymore. Some companies are taking steps. I loved how you framed it, add to your KPIs, KDIs,
Yeah.
and make it a little bit more tangible for that generation and for the culture of the company, and integrate that into the culture of your company. We talked about mindset. I think there is a need to educate also, to remove judgment on what pressure meant for us and means now for the younger generation. Like it's pressure. It's not better. It's not worse. It's different, and it has the same outcome that can result into burnout, right? And this is where I think we're a bit ignorant, because we think, oh yeah, you have everything. What could you potentially be missing, right?
You're privileged.
It's very you're very privileged on top of it. And yeah, I guess it's a good assessment. From the outside looks green. Like I love the watermelon analogy, and from the inside it's red. I think there is room for growth, improvement, and development, and not everything is as it seems. So I would have to get us towards the end, but it's not the end yet. What I would like to do with you, Irais, is a lightning round. So you identify as millennial.
Correct. I am millennial as well.
Let me ask you a few questions, and I would like to have your spontaneous reaction to that. Your favorite chat channel? How do you chat? WhatsApp. Social media you spend most of your time on?
TikTok and LinkedIn.
You get your music from?
Spotify, Discover Weekly, and my release radar.
You get podcasts from?
Spotify.
Physical books or audiobooks?
Physical books, yeah.
What is the one skill you would recommend Gen Z to learn?
To have real, honest conversations about the things that really matter in life and in your career.
And what is the one skill you would recommend Gen X's current leaders to acquire, to learn?
Ask questions. Always start with ask and then go into tell mode, but start with ask first.
And last one, a famous person you would love to meet.
I would say Esther Perel, but I've met her already, and it was just, I was stunned by her level of emotional bandwidth. And next month, or at the end of the month, I'm finally meeting Simon Sinek. So I would love to have dinner with him. That's of course the dream, but I'm going to see him live on stage, and I'm very much looking forward to that. Or Jay Shetty.
All right.
Not
Yeah,
sure.
well,
Simon Sinek, Jay Shetty.
If somebody knows any of the two, and you can arrange a dinner with Irais, please reach out. Otherwise, Simon, if you're listening, Irais is going to be in Amsterdam next week. So you see her around. She would like to be taken out for dinner. And as I learned, I think he is single, but you're married, so that doesn't work.
Single.
All right, Irais, it was a blast having you on the show, getting your perspective, priceless, very enriching. And I'm sure our listeners will enjoy that episode.
Likewise.
We did mention that you are a human performance and leadership coach. And if people want to find out more, we will leave a reference in the show notes. And with that,
we are super thankful for everything, Iraïs. It was a great conversation. Thank you so much. We will let our listeners know that you can find us wherever you get your podcast from, including YouTube. So please hit that follow or subscribe button, leave a comment with your thoughts or reactions, and we'll get back to discuss everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
And just like that, it's time, and we will be back next week.
Thank you.